Hey, welcome to Mooney Reads. My name is Beck, and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of April. In April, I participated in National Poetry Month. I also participated in the Not a Novel Readathon hosted by Bear from EdTube Verde. I also attempted to participate in the Disability Readathon and the Autism Pride Readathon. I did not fulfill all of the TBRs, or even close to all of the TBRs. But I did read some stuff, so I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to break it down by genre, which is not something I've done recently at the very least. And within each genre, I'm going to go with the most recent read, or the one that I read first to the one that I read most recently. The first thing that I read this month was How Poetry Can Change Your Heart by Andrea Gibson and Megan Falley. This was a reread, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. If you want to hear more about this and the other poetry, you can check out my vlogs that I've been doing throughout the month. After that, I read the selected poetry of Langston Hughes. I did enjoy this one. This did not hit me as, hard and, a guttural, emotional way like some of the other poetry collections did, but it was still a very good poetry collection. This is the only one that I didn't talk about in my poetry vlogs because it is coming out in the secret TBR vlog that I'm going to put out. I wanted it to be out at the end of April. Turns out I still need to read 2.5 more books for it, so you'll get it when you get it, and I won't say a date because it'll probably happen afterwards if I try to put another date on it. So, Langston Hughes. I think I gave this 3.75 stars. It's definitely solid, a worthwhile classic for sure. And then I read The Madness Vase by Andrea Gibson. Andrea Gibson is one of my favorite poets, and this collection did not disappoint. 5 stars. Then we had a series of several other 5-star poetry collections, including Burning Sugar by Cicely, Belle, Blain, Even This Page is White by Vivek, Shraya, and Disintegrate, Dissociate by Arielle Twist. This next poetry collection is Aphrodite Made Me Do It by Trista, and I had a really great time with this poetry collection. I did give it 4 stars as opposed to 5, but it wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. It was really good. I still had a lot of thoughts and feelings about it. Like I said, you can hear more about those thoughts and feelings in my vlogs. The one with Aphrodite Made Me Do It is not going to be out yet because I still have to edit it. Then, finally, I have a collection that I started but have not finished yet, so it will be carrying on into the next month. It is an anthology, so it might take me a little while to get through it. But that is We Want It All, an anthology of radical trans poetics, edited by Andrea Abi-Karam and Gabriel. This is really interesting so far. There are some that I really, really enjoy, some that are flying right over my head, but it is really cool, and I'm anticipating finishing it. So, that is all of the poetry that I read, and I accidentally made it all queer, which shouldn't really be that surprising, to be honest, but I thought it was pretty funny. Only 2 of these books are written by cis people. Maybe 3. I think one of the authors is cis, and then the other one isn't for this book. But either way, they're all queer. National Poetry Month. Oops, all queers edition. Okay, so that was poetry. Next we can get into graphic novels and manga. The first graphic novel that I read this month, I read for the Not a Novel Readathon. A lot of those poetry collections I also read during the Not a Novel Readathon. So this first one was Bloom, which was super adorable. I read this. It was for the Not a Novel Readathon, but it was also during the 24/7, so you can see kind of more thorough thoughts on that in the vlogs too. This is like a recap of my vlogs if you didn't want to sit for 45 minutes and watch a video. But this was excellent. I gave it 4 stars. Super cute. Then after that, for the same readathons, I read the first 2 volumes of Komi Can't Communicate, which was super cute. I gave the first one 3 stars and the second one 3.5 stars. I think the series has a lot of promise. It could also go like a pretty negative way, but hopefully it won't, especially given like some of the details. It's pretty cute, and I'm thinking this might count for the Autistic Pride Readathon because I don't know much about the author. It's a little bit hard to find stuff in English about a lot of the manga authors that I've attempted to find information about. But this author, or this main character, I think is really clearly coded to be autistic. I just don't know if they use that same language around autism. But regardless, cute series around friendship. Love to see it. The other two graphic novels that I read were through Hoopla, and they were both for the 48-hour superhero readathon that Lesba Reader put up. And I vlogged about both of these in my vlog that's going to come out. The first one that I read was Nimona by Noelle Stevenson, which I knew was going to be cute, but I was not prepared at all. I literally sobbed. Twice. It was a 5-star, hands down. I kind of want to buy my own copy. Then the other one that I read was Nubia, the real one, by L.L. McKinney and Robin Smith, and that one was excellent. I gave it 4.5 stars. Related to graphic novels, we have children's books. I read 3 of them while I was at work, so again, I don't have them with me, but they'll be on the screen. The first one was I Am One, A Book of Action by Susan Verde and Peter Reynolds, which was cute, calming, centering, pretty solid. Gave it 3.5 stars. After that, I read 2 gay Mother's Day books because they were on a display and it made my heart warm. The first one was Plenty of Hugs by Fran Maunshkin, and the story and the writing in this was a little bit lacking, but the artwork was so cute. And honestly, just like the butch, gender non-conforming mom, like, I was trying not to cry in the middle of a bookstore. Just the artwork was really good, and we love to see the representation. I'm not sure I've ever, like, seen myself in a parental figure before, so that was weird, but, like, in a good way. And then the other book that I read, another gay Mother's Day book, was Mommy, Mama, and Me, which I gave 3.5 stars. I gave Plenty of Hugs 3 stars. Mama and Me, I thought that the writing was a little bit more solid. It was still, like, simple kids book, but it was good. Good children's books. Next we have fiction books, like just regular novels. I only have 2, one that I finished, one that I'm in the middle of. The one that I finished was Drag King Dreams by Leslie Feinberg, which you will hear more about in the aforementioned secret TBR vlog. This was excellent. I think I gave it 4.5 stars, but it was really great, and everybody should read it. If you're in or interested in activism in any capacity, read everything that Leslie Feinberg has written, but be mindful of the trigger warnings, which I put in my reviews of them on Goodreads and Storygraph. Drag King Dreams fit the disability readathon because the author has Lyme disease, so it could have technically fit in category of 3 of something with green on the cover. The main character in this, it didn't say, had any, like, physical disability. I think there's definitely something to be said about, like, trauma and mental health, that sort of thing, but they do actually talk about disability with a couple of the minor characters in a way that is a lot more nuanced than other things. It's definitely not a main focus, but with all the discussion of, like, solidarity and stuff like that, and looking at different types of oppression, Leslie Feinberg is sure to include discussion on disability. There's a deaf side character, and also a side character with a physical disability, and a side character with HIV. Now, the book that I started and didn't quite finish was Moon of the Crusted Snow. I wanted to finish it before the live show, but I worked during the live show anyways, so I wouldn't have been able to attend. But I did get about half the way through. I really want to finish it in the next few days. I do have thoughts on it. I won't go too far into them, though, because I think that I'm just at the point where stuff is going to start picking up. So, that was that. I'm still going to be reading that, bringing it into May. Going into nonfiction, the book that I finished this month was Breaking the Walls of Silence by the members of the ACE program. I've talked about this in a couple of other wrap-ups because I've been working on it for a few months. But this talks about the experience of a group of women in a maximum security prison in New York, and they were trying to put together a support group and an education group surrounding HIV and AIDS. And this documents their experience trying to get the group to happen, so trying to work with the prison. And then it talks about a lot of the programming that they actually did. So they have like outlines for the workshops and the educational materials that kind of went alongside those to facilitate the discussion. This was a really interesting read. I'm not sure that I would recommend this to like any random person. Mostly because like I think a lot of people like reading would probably like skim over the workshops a little bit more, and like the statistics and stuff like that are obviously outdated. So if you want to know what it's like to have HIV in prisons now, this isn't going to be totally reflective, although there are still higher rates of HIV in prisons than other places, and the healthcare infrastructure is still shit. And this can tell you some history about it, so if you're wanting to go at it from that angle, definitely pick it up. If you're really interested in HIV and the experiences of various marginalized people, this is a good one to go to. And I'm still in the process of like looking at everything, but no titles that I have found so far are solely focused on the experience of women's prisons in terms of HIV and AIDS. That doesn't mean that nothing exists, and there's probably stuff more like in journals, maybe some anthologies, but certainly when I was researching Katrina Haslip, this was the only book that pulled up, and she was an activist. After she came out of prison, she continued to be an HIV activist and was influential in the decision to add criteria that impacted AFAB people into the kind of into the diagnostic criteria for AIDS that wasn't there before. So that's why I got into the book. And there are sections that are written by her. There are sections that are written by everybody. The format of this book, I'm talking about this way too long, but that's fine. The format of like the beginning of this book is it goes back and forth between people and talks about their individual experiences. So the great thing about this is that you are getting it straight from their perspective. It is not necessarily completely unfiltered, because most of these women, or at least some of these women, were still in prison when this was released. This had to, I think, probably go through certain processes. They don't say it in the book, but this has been written in the prison. There are sections written by administrators, but the biggest thing, my biggest takeaway from this was really seeing that the experience that the LGBT community had with HIV and AIDS, this was something that was shared throughout a lot of communities that were highly impacted by HIV and AIDS. Everybody who was impacted by AIDS was having to fight for their life, make their own, materials to try to save other people. Were trying to care for each other on the ground, like in nursing capacity, as well as like counselors and therapist capacity. Just brings to light how just how fucked up it was. And this isn't even one of like the deep, nitty gritty. Like, I'm sure that some of the other stuff that I'm going to read is going to be more detailed, than this. But it's just beyond fucked up, especially since they're in an institution. And they committed crimes, but like, there are rules. If you're going to house a bunch of people, you have to give them basic care. Otherwise, you're just torturing them. It just goes to show how shitty prisons are, especially hearing why most of them were in prison. Nobody should be in prison, but certainly most of these women absolutely did not belong in prison. Going to prison for pickpocketing, having addictions, You know, if they spent half the money that they spent on these prisons in these communities, they wouldn't have been there. And a lot of them probably wouldn't have HIV if they had invested that into community resources for that. So it's an interesting and enlightening book, and I really enjoyed being able to see all of their perspectives. And it, you know, reading about all of this continually reveals just how absolutely and fundamentally fucked up a lot of systems are. And this wasn't even going at an approach of like, look at how bad the prison is. This is like probably edited and definitely had input by prison administrators. And yet it's still so obviously fucked. Staying on the theme of prisons, I also worked on Captive Genders, which is my buddy read with Brianna. We read, I think I initially thought the section was shorter than it actually is. The section that we read was Walled Lives, Consolidating Difference, Disappearing Possibilities. And this was probably the hardest section to read. They talk about the link between the prison industrial complex and the military industrial complex. There are several stories from people who are in prisons and have re-entered and have been within these systems their whole life. Like being in the foster care system first and kind of that pipeline through the state and through trauma from the state, kind of going from the foster care system into the prison system. There was another piece that focused on masculine people in women's prisons, which was also just fucked. Like, the main issue that they faced were the male prison guards. And they also talked about healthcare and being denied HRT in prisons. In prisons that were supposed to give them HRT. Like, legally. Like, the policy was there for them to get HRT, but they still didn't receive it because the people around them were shitty. So, more light, happy reading about our glorious country. Okay. Next I read, I didn't technically finish this book, but I did finish, like, something that was originally published by itself. Next, I read The Communist Manifesto, by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. I actually completed the manifesto. I did not complete this book because this book is The Communist Manifesto and other readings. Got to the Communist Manifesto, still need to get to the other readings. And I do plan on actually reading those. This was really good. I mean, I'd read some of Marx before. I think I actually have a decent amount of thoughts in my 24/7 vlog, so you can check that out for more. But this was pretty good. I didn't give it a star rating because I haven't logged it yet because I've only read half of it. And I don't really know what I would give a star rating to, like, a fundamental theoretical piece. But I read that. And then the last book that I have to talk about is one that I am part of the way through, and that is Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde. I'm about halfway through this as well, so hopefully over the next week or so I can finish this and Moon of the Crusted Snow. This one, I don't think I did for the Disability Readathon. I'm not sure. I've heard, I haven't looked into it a ton, but I'm not sure if, like, Audre Lorde necessarily identified herself as disabled, but she did have cancer, which is a chronic illness, which kind of goes under that umbrella. So this would have fit for Category 4, written before you were born, because this was published in the 80s. I was born in 93. So hopefully I will finish this soon. So, that was my reading month. There were a lot of really good ones that I really wanted to get to, but obviously didn't get to, like Failure to Communicate and We Both Laughed in Pleasure. I'll get to them eventually. You know how it goes. Things go on your TBR and then eventually they get read. Eventually. So, that was my reading month for April. If you've read any of these, definitely let me know about it down in the comments. And let me know about your favorite read from April. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye.